Okay, so here's the 4.2 practice 1 video solution set. I'm going to do this for the Honors Algebra 2 class. It's virtually the same assignment for both classes. So I'm only going to do this once for both of, I'll just use this one for both Algebra 2 and Honors Algebra 2. So this has to do with some parabola stuff. So let's look at this. We want to write the simplified standard form equation of the parabola with focus at 4, 0 and directrix at x equals -4. So this is, remember, this is helpful for problems like this to draw yourself a quick sketch. So let's do that. Okay, so the directrix is the line x equals -4. That's going to be a vertical line because it cuts through the x-axis at -4. So there's the directrix, and the focus is at 4, 0. So because the x value of the focus is 4 and the x value of the directrix is -4, that tells me that the focus is going to be to the right of the directrix. So here's going to be the focus. Put F for focus, and the coordinates are 4, 0. And then remember that the vertex of the parabola is going to be halfway in between the focus and the directrix. And the parabola always opens to swallow the focus. So it's going to look like that, right? And the standard form equation of a sideways parabola, remember that is the variable that's being squared is going to be y. So it's going to be y minus k squared equals 4p times x minus h. So I just need to know the values of h and k, which are the coordinates of the vertex, and then the value of p, which is the length of the arrow pointing from the vertex to the focus. Okay, so first of all, what are the coordinates of the vertex going to be? So there's v for vertex. Well, we know that the vertex and the focus line up horizontally, so they must share the same y coordinates. They both must have a y value of 0. And then the x coordinate of the vertex is just going to be halfway in between the x coordinates of the focus and the directrix. So I'm just going to average those two. Well, what's the middle value of 4 and -4? 4 plus -4/2, if I average them, is just 0/2, which is 0. So the coordinates of the vertex in this case are just 0, 0. So that tells me that those are the values of h and k. H is 0 and k is 0. And then remember that p is the length of the arrow or vector that starts at the vertex and moves to the focus. So this arrow is pointing to the right, and so that's the positive x direction. So p is positive. And how far is it from 0, 0 to 4, 0? Well, my x value is changing by 4, so the length of that vector is 4. So p is 4, h is 0, k is 0. I just plug that stuff into my standard form equation of the parabola, and what do we get? Well, y minus 0 is just y, so y squared equals 4 times 4 is 16, and then x minus 0 is just x. So that's my answer. Y squared equals 16x. I'm going to skip up to number 4 because these are all pretty similar. And so let's look at one like this. Okay, so what about this one? So now we've got a directrix, the line that forms the directrix is y equals -6. Now that's going to be a horizontal line because it's cutting through the y-axis at -6. So, oops. So we've got the directrix, y equals -6, and the focus is the point 1, -8. So that's actually, let me move this up a little bit. Because we can see that the focus has a y value that is less than -6, so it's going to be located below the directrix, so down here. So there's my focus with coordinates 1, -8, and the vertex is halfway in between. So there's V. We're going to find its coordinates, which are h and k. In this case, the parabola is going to open down. And so we would anticipate that P, because the parabola is opening in the negative y direction, P is going to be negative. Okay. And we'll see what the value is here in a second. So what are the coordinates of the vertex? The vertex and the focus line up vertically this time, which means they have the same x value. So the x coordinate of the vertex is 1. The y coordinate is going to be the average of the y coordinates of the focus and the y value of the directrix. So the average of -6 and -8, what's halfway in between? Well, -7. If I want to actually average them, -6 plus -8 is -14 divided by 2. Either way, if we just think about it, we can see that the y coordinate's -7. So then if we keep like a running tally here, we know h is 1, k equals -7, and p is going to be the length of the vector pointing from the vertex to the focus, or the arrow. Well, that's pointing in the negative direction, so p is negative. And how far is it? Well, we're going from -7, a y value of -7 to -8, so we're just moving 1 down. So p is -1. Now this time we've got a vertical parabola, and so our standard form is x, whoops, this is wide. X minus h squared plus 4p times y minus k. So I've made all the parameters red. Those are the numbers we're going to be plugging in, right? And there are the values that we figured out from our graph. So what do we end up with then? X minus 1 quantity squared equals 4 times -1. 4 times p is -4 times y minus -7. So that's my answer. So what did we say? X minus 1 squared equals -4 times y plus 7. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so last few here, we're trying to convert these equations into standard form equations of a parabola. So let's look at just a couple examples of this. Okay, so in this case, it looks like the x variable is being squared, right? And so we want to, if necessary, complete the square for x, but we don't need to because the only x term is the x squared. So this is a pretty simple one. We're trying to put this into the standard form where the x is being squared, remember, is x minus h squared equals 4p times y minus k. So the x terms go on the left, so we get x squared on the left. We're going to add everything else to the other side. So we'll add 12y and 12 to both sides, which gives us x squared equals 12y plus 12. Okay, but we want that to look like some number times y minus k, right? So we want this to look like on the right side some number times y plus or minus some number there, right? Well, what's the number that has to go out front? If we want the y to be by itself in this quantity, whatever the coefficient of y is on the right side, that's what I have to factor out of both terms. Or you can think of it as undistributing. So if I undistribute that 12, what are we left with on the right side? If I undistribute the 12 from the 12y, we're stuck with a y. If I undistribute the 12 from a 12, I get a 1. There's a couple ways you can think about that. When I factor out a 12, what I'm really doing is just dividing each term by 12 to see what I'm left with. 12y divided by 12 is y. 12 divided by 12 is 1. The other way I like to think about this is just by kind of thinking backwards. So if we know that we're gonna undistribute a 12, then what would I need? Let's get rid of this. What would I need to be here in order for me to get this result? For me to get 12y, let me rewrite that. That's a mess. For me to get 12y plus 12, when I distribute the 12 through, well, 12 times y is 12y, and 12 times what is going to give me positive 12? 12 times 1. And so either way you want to go about that, you can either just think about factoring out the greatest common factor of 12 or undistributing the 12 because that's what's in front of the y and figuring out what's left over if I undistribute the 12. So that's my answer. Okay, let's look at a little harder one. How about something like that? Okay, so this time, we can see that the variable that's being squared is the x variable. And so we know that we're going to want to match this up to the standard form. Oops. X minus h squared equals 4p times y minus k. So we want to collect all of the x terms together on the left side, and we'll push the other stuff to the other side. So we'll subtract 12y and subtract 52. And so we're going to complete the square with these x terms. We're going to end up with x squared minus 4x space equals negative 12y minus 52. Now we need to complete the square for these x terms so that we can get something like x minus h squared. So half of negative 4 is negative 2. So we can already see that h is 2. That's the number that's being subtracted from x. But to get that perfect square, I've got to add the blue number 4 to both sides, right? Because it's an equation, so I have to treat both sides equally. So what am I left with then on the other side? Well, I've got negative 12y minus 52 plus 4 is minus 48. And so I've got to go through that same process of factoring out a negative 12. And so we're left with x minus 2 squared equals negative 12 times what? Well, we're left with y minus 4, right? Negative 12 divided by negative 12y divided by negative 12 is y. Negative 48 divided by negative 12 is, what should be plus 4. Okay, or the other way to think about it is, if I undistribute a negative 12, what do I need over here to create negative 48? Negative 12 times what is negative 48? Positive 4. So there's my answer in standard form. So let's try that. Okay, got it.